Today, I am going to be chatting about practicing values-aligned living for a joyful and sustainable life. And to get started, I'd like to share some different reasons why this matters. And I'd like to offer these thoughts from a mind, emotion, and body perspective. So clarity around our core values ensures that we don't miss out on the very imperfect and beautiful life in front of us. Sometimes we get focused on waiting for the fairy tale imaginary ideal that doesn't exist, and we can miss out on the life in front of us. Clarity around our core values requires of us to sift through competing tensions and desires to name the truth of who we are and what we want and need. Feeling deeply connected with our core values serves as a lifeline or anchor that holds us fast through the storms of life. It helps us stay the course and quiet the noise of comparison, perfectionism, and fear, but also fear of missing out and the mean voice of our inner critic, tuning that out so that we do not quit. And embodying our core values ensures that we make space in our full, messy lives for joy, belly laughs, delight, rest, play, connection, whatever it is that's most important to each of us. It also helps us take consistent, imperfect action towards the vision that we have for our life, and also the vision that we have for who and how we choose to be in the world. So in my work with clients and community, I consistently circle back to the work of life visioning and identifying our core values because it's that important. It is foundational to a brave, joyful, and sustainable life. And I practice this too. For me, this isn't just like a nice idea. It's actually something that is key in my life, and it has helped me through the death of my son, through trauma and grief and healing forward and all of that. So it's one of the things that has helped me not only stay alive, but actually to thrive in every season. And so I think it actually could serve you as well. I'm going to share 4 ways that people often get stuck when talking about values-aligned living. One of the ways that people get stuck often and actually just live distracted is by focusing on the what and the how of life instead of starting with why. So you may even notice this actually in your own life, that it's easy to see all these shiny ideas or gather all these shiny ideas, see what other people are up to, and get excited about a new thing. We dive into the doing or even the goal setting, but we forget to anchor it to our values. And all of the beautiful goals in the world are only noise if they are not anchored into our why. Another reason that people get stuck when trying to do this work is that they try to do life like other people. They forget to honor their unique wiring and their capacity in every season. I have other resources that speak to this, but briefly, we all have finite capacity of energy and attention and finances and so forth in every season, and it doesn't stay static. It ebbs and flows, and we need to honor the truth of what is, honor our capacity in order to be able to keep showing up fully to life. A third reason that people get stuck is that they forget life is not only about the goals and accomplishment, it's also actually about simply building a brave and beautiful life, right? So it's not only about the accomplishments, it's about the fuller picture. And the fourth way that people often get stuck when doing this work is that they believe that walking out their values is dependent upon ideal circumstances. So they think that life has to be going smoothly in order to do this. And that is not true. Storms come, hard things come. This is inevitable because you're human in this world. And you can walk out your values independent of whatever else is happening around you. I'm going to share 3 ways that you can begin to take action or explore the idea of values-aligned living, we need to identify our core values. It seems obvious. You can go online and Google core values worksheets, and you'll find at least a handful of good quality ways to get started. They'll generally show up as lists of adjectives that you will kind of sift through. They'll offer you a process of just kind of sifting through to really focus in on your core values. I recommend sifting down to 5 maximum. Once you do that initial work, you're going to need to try them on for size. So I recommend that you do your best. Don't worry about perfection. You're going to try them on for size. You're going to test them out. So write them down in a sticky note, check in with them daily, and go about your normal life. And then just see what comes up. Notice if a word, for instance, just needs a tiny little edit to feel more true to you. I will say that our core values tend to remain fairly stable over our lifetime, or at the very least, our adult life. I feel like before 20, that's another thing. But then once we get to kind of like 25-ish, let's say, through adulthood, they tend to remain fairly stable. They don't shift all the time like a word of the year, say. So that can be, over time, that can be a good clue that you've really hit upon your honest to goodness core values. We need to check in with our core values regularly. At first, I would say daily. As you practice this over the years, you'll have them memorized, and that's actually another recommendation, is we need to know them by heart. But the more that you do this work, you might get away with 2 check-ins a year to really kind of sit down and go through your values again, make sure you're on track, etc. So my core values, I'll just share them with you as an example, are freedom, integrity, curiosity, brave, community, and contribution. And I walk these out in every season in my personal life and also in my work. Number 2, we can learn how to use our core values as a filter for all of our decision making. Do you feel at home in your life? That's the language I like to use, at home in my body and my life. So do you feel at home in your life, or do you regularly feel distracted and discouraged? Check in with yourself for a moment. So values-aligned living is a path to feeling at home and joyful in our body and our life. A couple considerations that I'm going to offer you today. Number 1, I find that this exercise is really valuable. So it's a weekly rhythm exercise. It is not about creating some perfect schedule that you're going to follow. It's actually about a visual representation of what is currently going on in your life, because we have to know where we are in order to carve a path forward. So it's just an exercise. So go online, Google weekly calendar template, and you'll find hundreds of free options that you can print. You're going to need to do at least 3 drafts of this exercise, but get started with number 1. For the first draft, all you need to do is brain dump all of your commitments, all of the things that are a normal part of your life. So like grocery shopping and meal prep and driving kids to soccer and your date night with your partner and work, So we want to just get everything onto paper, out of our head onto paper, where we can actually see it and start sifting. A few questions for you as you do this. First of all, have you actually been honest and put everything on here? Is there room for everything? If you're like a lot of people, I would say at least 80% of the people that I do this with, you can't really realistically fit everything on a weekly calendar, a weekly page. And that's perfect. That's what we want to see. We want to see the truth of what is so that we can begin to take action. So is everything on there? Is there buffer or white space between activities? There are always going to be the inevitable interruptions, things that you can't plan for. So we need to leave white space in our days. Is it sustainable? Is there enough time for rest, for connection, for feeding your body? Does it reflect your core values? You should be able to see them on the page. once you get through that third draft, what we really want is that your core values are clearly reflected on this one page. It's like a snapshot of your life. And by the way, you can do this with a spending plan or budget as well. It can be a really good, valuable exercise. So again, this is simply an exercise to give you a good visual of what's really happening in your life and the fact that we all have to sift through competing tensions and desires. Okay, moving on a bit. Just like a healthy relationship requires healthy, flexible boundaries, so does a healthy life. We require boundaries. Boundaries allow us to make space and guard and honor space for the things that we say that we want and need. This is not going to happen through happenstance or on autopilot. We have to consciously do this work. I check in at least seasonally. I tend to practice seasonal living. It's a great practice. So, every quarter, check in, notice how you're filling up your calendar, notice what's working and what isn't, and make some hard decisions to release what isn't actually values aligned. We can also learn to listen inward. Our body will give us clues. We'll notice, for instance, you may notice emotions like anger or resentment. You may notice just this sense of disquiet or dis-ease in your body and your life. That may happen because there's a boundary violation in your life, actually. And, we sometimes find a boundary by bumping up against it. And in the same way, we might notice that there is something in conflict with one of our core values. We may actually find one of our core values in this way simply by listening inward and noticing our patterns around resentment or anger, as an example. What can happen actually, even as we do this work, is that two of your values may actually be kind of competing for attention right now. And what we can do in that situation is reorder our values, actually order them. What are the top two values? And that can really help us see which value needs to rise to the top in this season. So my top two values are freedom and integrity. Knowing that brings so much clarity and calm to my life. It helps me make hard decisions, helps me hold on through really hard seasons. If anything in my life that comes into conflict with freedom or integrity, it's out of here. Okay, the third part that I want to speak to around values aligned living today is that our core values anchor us through the highs and lows of our messy and beautiful life. I'm going to invite you here to just pause for a moment and check in with yourself and ask yourself, how do I want to feel in my body and my life? So that we're not always focused on the doing or hustle. Sometimes actually when we focus too much on the accomplishment or the goals, we lose sight of the people in our life or other things that are actually really significant and valuable to us. We need to practice agency if we're going to live a values-aligned life. And we always have a measure of agency, even in the hardest seasons of life, even when things are spinning out of control and they're really scary and painful. We can still walk out our values. And in fact, it is the clear, deep embodiment of our values that is going to allow us to stay rooted and resilient through these really hard seasons. And we can learn how to honor our wiring and capacity for a values-aligned life that feels joyful and sustainable. Learning how to honor our wiring is a whole big separate conversation, but essentially, it means just getting to know ourselves, getting to befriend ourselves so that we really know what we want and need and how our brain wiring. So fighting reality just keeps us stuck and or spiraling downward. We need to face reality, name our limitations, shame and judgment free, and then choose one step forward. Notice where all or nothing thinking keeps you stuck. You don't have to see the whole path ahead. You don't even have to really understand this work. All you have to do is identify one tiny little step to take, because we find our way in action, not before.